Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
And welcome back to another edition of the Unity Talks podcast. I'm your host, David Cathey. And I always say this at the beginning of each show, which is, what is the Unity Talks podcast all about? So it is interviewing executives in accounting, finance, tax, human resources, technology in the state of Texas. You'll find that most of the people we've talked to have been in DFW, but we've started leaking into Austin, San Antonio, and mostly Houston as those guests. So hopefully this will continue to take off and you'll tune in. The guest we have today, I'm excited to introduce. It's going to be Raki Shah. Raki, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be great. So Raki's really good friends with one of my business partners, Greg Barentine. They went to business school together years ago. So we're going to try to keep the show professional and not say bad things about Greg so that all of his clients aren't going to call him up and make fun of him. So we'll keep that limited, okay?
Okay, maybe off the camera, right?
Off the camera,
Yeah.
We can do that as much as we want. All right, so starting off like we always do, we just want to give our audience a little bit of a snapshot of who you are, what you're doing, family, work. So if you want to take a 2-minute intro into that world of Raki.
Yeah, I've been in the Metroplex a better part of 25 plus years since graduating from UT. Worked in a number of roles, as CFO in accounting, as an investor, and have worked along the way with a lot of like high growth businesses, right? That's primarily what I've been working with, or who I've been working with, and decided to recently hang up my shingle and do those things for founder-led businesses. That's where I really thrive, and that's what excites me. And so,
Just this career history in an accounting and finance world, and it shaped you into more of founder-led, high-growth opportunities. Why accounting, finance? Why that to begin with? Like, what drew you to that educationally?
Yeah, I mean, I think that. It's actually very simple. My brother, who's 5 years older than me, he went in accounting, and he started his career at Deloitte & Touche. So it wasn't really any more complicated than that. But I would say that as a kid, I've always had a business tint, right? I've always kind of wondered how businesses make money, where as we're just interacting with businesses in everyday life.
Yeah.
And so. I'd say coupled with those things, and UT had a really good business school or accounting school, so
yeah,
I thought I'd give it a whirl.
Don't tell me that you were the 14-year-old that's reading the newspaper and looking at the stocks.
No, I didn't have a paper route. I wasn't picking stocks like Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
No, it was just more like it was interesting, and my parents we had a family business. We had a small business, and so. Kind of working there too. So perhaps that also led into my interest.
Yeah. I feel like when you're a kid and you're interested in business and you think, man, I want to be a CFO, you first start out thinking, I want to be a CFO of a big Jack Welch. At least that was the main guy when we were younger, right? GE. And then sometimes you take a look at that after you gain a little more knowledge, because then you're maybe a little ignorant to what they go through, and then you realize, I don't think I want to do that for a number of people, a big GE Fortune 500 type company. And I think then people branch off, like, I'm going to top my career out here, or I'm going to get away from accounting and finance entirely, or I'm going to start trying to create my own path different from that. And I feel like you did the latter one, right? You started trying to manifest your own path. Was that intentional, or is that just kind of how it happened?
No, I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, honestly, I just sort of followed my curiosity, right? So like, for example, when I was at Big Four, I always had this interest in M&A, right? I was doing some M&A work at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I started looking for opportunities in the M&A space, and that's sort of how I got. That's sort of how I fell into that role. And so I think throughout the years, whether it be software companies, whether it be kind of VC, private equity backed companies, or even, most recently a creator founder-led business, I've always really just kind of followed my curiosity. And so the diversity of experiences that I have was definitely not a plan I laid out in college.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I feel like when you say I followed my curiosity, that is going to be harder and harder for younger generations to do, because their curiosity is just like what the next reel or the next social media thing that comes up in their feed. So their mind doesn't have a chance to like really formulate much curiosity, and you've got young kids, so I'm sure you see that with your kids. What would you do to advise them? Because by virtue of what you would do to advise them for their curiosity, it's what you would also tell a 23, a 25, a 26-year-old on how to begin shaping their career.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think it's really kind of following that curiosity. It's what are you, even if it's scrolling, right? So I tell my daughter, what are you scrolling, what are you looking at late at night when you're done with your homework and you're kind of winding down? What are those kinds of things, right? What are the things that you're doing when you're not on screen? And if you literally, I think the biggest thing you can impart, in my opinion, on kids is letting them be bored, right? And then just see where that extra space, where that takes them. And so that's kind of how I would guide, whether it be kids or whether it be people early on in a career, because the tools and the resources are very different than when we were going through the ranks, right? It's information is accessible. Tools, AI being the prevalent one right now, make things very, very easy to build, right? And so it's really just kind of, in your downtime when you're coming home, it's not what you do in your 9 to 5, but it's what you do in your 5 to 9.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
You talked about, I want to stay on this for a few seconds, because you talked about you found your way to advising founder-led businesses. And if you're a founder-led business, especially if that business has come up within the past 10 years, it's probably because that founder was curious, right? So what have you learned from those founders that you're like, yes, this is exactly what I'm after now? I may be an integrator for that company,
yep,
but I also have curiosity, which led me here, and that founder's curiosity takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah, I mean, I think the common thread that I've found, and I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, is really kind of scratching their own itch. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. A pain point in their particular lives that have led them to just to go deep, right? I mean, I think that's the one thing. I think companies or entrepreneurs that are trying to fabricate something because that's where the market is, or that's where the total addressable market is, those are not the ones that are generally super successful. It's the ones that are essentially see a need in the market based on their own pain points and scratching their own itch. That they, entrepreneurship is tough. I mean, it is so tough. And so there is no work-life balance, especially early on. So to be able to do that and stay sane, you have to really, really be interested and passionate in whatever that business is.
That's a great answer. And here's one of the reasons why. There's a health expert that I listen to daily on his podcast. His name's Gary Brecka, and he has all these guests on his show talking about, biohacking your way to longevity and all this other stuff. And the common theme of all those founders that have their own business and been very successful is there was a need or a pain in their life. And they decided they were going to sit out and do something about it. And the level of passion they have for that business is a different level than someone that's just like, I want to be a multimillionaire or a centimillionaire, and so I'm going to start a business. Where can I make a lot of money? And there's passion in that, but it's not to the same degree, and they're not as willing to weather the storms that you would when it's like, I've had this health pain in my life, or my mom, or my parents, or my friend, and I'm going to go solve it by creating a company. So it's exactly what you just, those are the best ones.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, absolutely. Because in entrepreneurship, there is going to be pain. There's going to be hard times, right? I can't remember a single entrepreneur that I've worked with that has never been worried about making the next payroll, right? So like that is just kind of table stakes. And so to be able to endure that, you got to be really passionate about the problem.
Okay, so last thing on curiosity, and then I want to move forward on one other thing. Where was the turning point in your career? You were probably curious. You were curious about business. You saw your older brother, going into business, and that's piquing your curiosity. But at some point in time, you hit this edge on your career that's like, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to go for founder-led businesses. So what was that turning point?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I'll give two examples. I'd say kind of one early on, actually in school, right? Going to school, that's the first time I was actually exposed to the finance world, and I had a lot of colleagues that wanted to be, or friends that wanted to be investment bankers. And so, I really, that was the allure. That was like the sexy occupation within the business school. And so I could have easily sort of chased that, right? But I think the fact that I didn't, because I think I wanted that grounding, right? I've been always advised that accounting is the language of business. So I didn't chase it. I ended up going the Big Four accounting route to start. And I think that was the biggest blessing in disguise for me because, fast forward 25 years plus later, it's a real competitive differentiator when you're in the finance world because a lot of people in it they just don't understand accounting and how everything interacts, not only on the financial statements, but in business. And so, in hindsight, I think that was... I'm glad that I stuck with it. So that's kind of early in my career.
Yeah.
And then, I would say kind of most recently, I told you I was kind of following my intellectual curiosity and started working with creator-led holding company. And so what they essentially did was they provided business education at scale. So whether it was they've had a collection of portfolio companies, about a dozen or so, that they had equity interest in, and we would help them, grow their business, to the education side of their business where they would just help, entrepreneurs at scale, right? And the thing that really kind of unlocked, I had generally worked at bigger organizations, more structured organizations. But I think one of the things that unlocked for me is, number one, the magnitude, how many thousands of successful small entrepreneurs there are that you just have never heard of. You've just never heard of, right? And they're all doing, not they're all, but they're doing reasonably well, right? So then that's number one. And then number two, as I started to work with them and provide my expertise, started to realize that these entrepreneurs, they don't have access. They don't have access to the resources, to the expertise that the global 500 companies have or the private equity-backed companies have. They just don't. They don't know what they don't know. And it was wild, David. I could have a 15-minute conversation, not even, maybe a 10-minute conversation with one of these entrepreneurs, and it completely unlocks the next phase, right? And that was incredibly rewarding for me, incredibly rewarding. And so that's really, I think those two things have really kind of led me to decide to go out on my own. I love growth. I love working with entrepreneurs, and I feel like it's very rewarding, and I feel like I can deliver a lot of value that they really don't have access to.
I think that's really good to consider. I think, we talked about how these founders are super curious, so they take it to the next level, to the point where they will create a business. And then you can come in as, like if we were to use EOS language, you can come in as the integrator.
Right.
And there's this book that I really like that speaks to this. It's 10x is easier than 2x by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And without an integrator bringing that knowledge, and it's a repetitive knowledge, like there's got to be some system that you're applying to a degree. That system will have nuanced differences pending the structure of the organization that you're walking into. But it would really be, in my eyes, hard. You want the visionary to operate in that visionary space at all times. And when you're starting a business, often as the visionary, you're like, well, I don't want to hire someone to do that because then I'm having to pay them, and I don't want to do that, so I'm going to do that too. And then they get bogged down in minutia instead of operating in their mode of genius, which is visionary. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say for you. What piqued your curiosity is, yeah, I can come in, I'll understand the business. I have kind of a repetitive cycle that I can implement based on the structure of an organization, and I can integrate them to where they're not going to necessarily grow 2x. They would grow 2x if they continue to try to do everything. But me coming in, my mode of genius is helping them grow 10x.
Yeah.
And 10 times the growth of where they came from. And I think that's what's, especially in the AI, to go back to where we began at the very beginning with people with AI and systems and the technology space. Like, I just think that industry, anything tied to that, is poised to be, let a visionary stay where they're at with your skill set, which is kind of, I love supporting visionaries. I love growth, and you can watch them fly to the moon in the technology space.
Yeah.
I think that's critical.
Yeah. No, I think that's right on.
When you look at, so certainly as you've looked back at your career, you're like, man, this is what's been good. I've learned this from the visionary. I have a high degree of curiosity. We learn from those, and we talked about pain earlier from an entrepreneur, but certainly often the sting of disappointment is one of the best teachers in life.
Yeah.
So when you look back on your career, have you learned from a sting of disappointment or something that you regret that you would say, man, if I was talking to my kids and they're graduating from school, or a young employee of an organization at 25 who wants to climb in their career, I would tell them this from what I've learned?
Yeah. In terms of if I had to go back again, right?
Yep. Yeah. If there was
Yeah.
something that you look back and you regret, and you're
Yeah.
like, man, if I would have taken
Yeah.
advantage of this.
I think that, like, what I would recommend I do this with my kids, and then also, folks really at any age, but particularly as they're starting their careers, building their careers, is that you want to optimize, or you want to maximize the mentors, right? You want to work at good companies for good people, right? So when I mean good companies, it's they've got the culture that you want, and they're growing, right? Couple that with someone that you can work with that will mentor you, right? I think that's generally served me well. I think where it hasn't, or where my biggest regrets was when I didn't, right? So I didn't take a job in Silicon Valley during the days that where Google actually just started. Like, I could have been right in the heart of that. because I had a $2,000 job offer more here in Dallas, right? And I started thinking, oh, the cost of living, this and that. You know, there was not leaving my stable job to be the first employee of an entrepreneur here that built $1 billion business.
Wow.
$1 billion+ business. Because I, you know, at 23, 24, I overvalued the sort of stability of it all, right? And so like...
Now, were you single and married?
Yeah.
Okay, so no kids, single.
Yeah, and so, you know, there's seasons in life, and so like what you want to do is you want to chase the opportunities and you want to chase mentorship early on, and those are the things that will give you that will compound your financial results later in life.
Yeah, you have the opportunity for you to recover from a mistake is there's so much time for you to recover, right? And as you grow in your career, you certainly can still recover because you have to sit back and you go, man, I'm smart enough to recover, but that window shortens a little bit. But when you're single, no kids, if it was a mistake, you have plenty of time to recover.
Right.
So take the risk.
Right. Especially when we're talking $2,000 a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Which is, frankly, that was literally the key decision maker for me, you know? And, you know, think about, for example, in my case, like, what if I was there? Like in the height of you know, the first iteration of Silicon Valley. I mean, who knows what would have happened?
Crazy, yeah.
You know?
We might not even be sitting here
That's
today
right.
having this discussion. I had kind of in a weird way an opposite experience from you. So I was probably 26, wife, 2 kids, mortgage, car payments, school loans. And I was a senior finance manager at a large company, and another company, which everybody in the world knows, flies me out to LA, interviews me, makes me a job offer. It's $20,000 more than what I was making in Dallas, but it's in LA, and I've got a wife and 2 kids, and I'm like, that's not enough, because that cost of living I was still losing. And so I declined it because of that reason. And my wife and I have always said, I wouldn't regret it because I love how my career has ended up now. But had my circumstances been different, had it just been my wife and I without kids,
You would have taken it.
100%. I would have taken the opportunity. Because my season in life, to go back to what you just said, my season in life was different with a wife and 2 kids.
For sure.
I needed to know that I was going to I'm going to move my family halfway across the United States. I needed to know that I was moving it for a level up financially. And so we were roughly the same age, but our seasons of life were wildly different from each other, which mine caused me to do what I did, and yours, looking back, you would have been like, if I could do that over and not go for the 2,000 stability.
Right, because I didn't need it.
Exactly.
And I missed out on what could have happened. But again, no regrets. I've done, I've done quite nicely. But yeah, I think that's right. I think, chasing. Really, it's the opportunity, right? It's the opportunity, and it's the mentorship, it's the people, in really interesting organizations. I think, that's the most important on the front end of your career, or even in the middle, as opposed to, maximizing the dollar that you're going to get.
Yeah, I think at any point in time in your career, it's important, like I sit back and look now, and I'm part of this old man, I call it, they'd kill me if they knew this, I call it my old man's book club, because I'm the youngest one in the book club, but we're all old. And it's like, they're all, a chairman of a company, a surgeon, an attorney, multiple business owners. And, I look at those guys as mentors because I still need them.
Yeah.
I still want them. Like I want to surround myself with people like that, you know. And you saying I might regret this in my career, I kind of think back on mine, and I'm like, yeah, there have been more people in my career that had I slowed down a little bit and not had blinders on about I want this job, I'm going to get this promotion, I'm going to work this, and just picked my head up for a second and said, I may not tell him, but I've got my eye on that guy or that girl, and they're going to be my mentor from afar. And I didn't think about that early enough. And now I want that to the point where I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's more, you've heard of Ikigai? Yeah. So it's more kind of finding that concentric circle or that shaded area where things that you're interested in, that will lead to you having a better life or having more fun and potentially, more success down the road. You don't know where it's gonna be, but general, if you pick that, then you're generally on the right path.
Yeah. I think I've not that I've recently learned this, but I keep thinking about your locus of control, right? And so, people always say you can only control what you can control, so focus on that. Well, you can control that circle. You can control, like, I want to model this aspect of my life after this person. I want to model this aspect of my life after this person. And you can pick that because that is within your locus of control. And I think that's really important. And I think as you get older in your career, I think you want to be the person in your career, you, me, and other people, where you model the behavior that someone would say, I may not tell Raki that I want to model my career or my life, or I consider him a mentor. I may not tell him, but I've got my eye on him from afar in a good way. And I think that for leaders listening to this, I think your daily walk in an office, what you do for your kids, more is caught than taught, you know? And so your daily walk needs to be, I want to model how I think other people should be, so that in years from now they can say, yeah, well, there was this one guy, Raki Shah, man, he was great. And I probably never told him this, but this is what I learned from him, and this is what I learned from him. And that's how you want to be on a daily basis.
No, 100%. I mean, we absolutely, in situations where we want to mentor people. And I'd say, the other thing, even if you're looking at it from a selfish standpoint, like a lot of the learnings that I've had, and the reason I've been able to kind of move into different markets and sort of where the puck was going, is learning from my juniors, right? Learning from my staff, or learning from people that have experience that I just don't, right? And I think that's one thing, especially as you're getting older and later in your career, is to kind of repivot back to learning. And don't think just because you have a lot of experience, you have all the answers, because look, the world has changed 180 degrees in the last 18 months, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think the learning never stops, and even the mentorship never stops, right? The folks that I work with, they were 15 years younger than me, and I think I've learned more from them than I did probably anyone else in my career.
Yeah, man, that is phenomenal advice, because like even your kid, you wanted to do something on your phone, I'm going to ask my kids, and they're obviously younger than I am, but they know how to get things done so fast. And you should apply that in just because people are working for you doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers and know all the information, especially in the world of, like, whether it's you're in technology or you're in accounting or finance. Like there's a CFO who sat in this chair with me a few years ago, and he's like, yeah, I used to be able to do these things in Excel. I just go to UTD and I ask kids there to do it because that's not where I should be focusing right now. And they can run circles around me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go find them and I'm gonna hire them to do what I need done. So learning not just from people who are older, but younger, huge. What if you were to look back and say, the audience that you serve. Actually, let me get to that first. The audience that you serve. So founder-led businesses. What if someone is listening to this, what would you say, is your sweet spot? Like if you are struggling with this or you're curious about this, that's when you would reach out to someone like me. What is that profile?
Yeah, I would say someone that is growth oriented. I think that's the most important thing, is someone that is looking to grow their business and they might have hit an inflection point, right? Whether it's on the strategy side or whether it's on the financing side or whether it's on the growth side, that's where someone like me would really provide value to, right? And so, for me specifically, I like working with businesses, between, I'd say, $5 to $150, $200 million that do have that growth orientation because, I was actually on a call earlier today with one of my clients, and I said, the beauty and the challenge of being a growth-oriented business is you've got a riches of opportunities, right? So there's a lot of different levers you can pull. It's a question of which ones do you want to pull and when, right? And those could be all over the place. Those could be like right now, this particular client, we're in this season because they're growing really fast. Like, okay, now can shift to the season of like profitability and working capital efficiency a little bit. Because you've got the growth engine working, whereas, someone else may have the exact inverse problem, right? But either way, there's always going to be an inflection points, constraints in your business. And so identifying the number one constraint that's holding your business back, looking to unlock that, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, no, that's right. Okay, so before I get to my last question, then I'm going to ask you, if someone is listening to this program and thinking that, how would they even get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my firm is called Athma Group. And I've got a website. It's just athmagroupllc.com. You find me on email, LinkedIn, et cetera, as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Any particular industries? You mentioned revenue size.
Yeah. So what because I've had such a diverse set, I actually, I'm looking to partner with local founders, right?
Okay.
I think it's just, some of these things when we're talking about value creation, those take, months and years, right, to develop. And I just want to deepen relationships with local businesses, right? So pretty industry agnostic.
Yeah.
Like right now, I've got clients in such a diverse number of industries. And so really where, again, the growth orientation, I think a size where I can, provide expertise that they don't have on staff or access to.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Last question for you then. If someone's listening to this and it's like, man, this is the one thing you're thinking, what is the one thing that they need to take away and they could start implementing tomorrow? What would that one thing be?
Yeah, I would say, I'm going to do a 1A, 1B. 1A, number one, just get, just nerd out on the AI stuff. I mean, it's just like, that's just kind of table stakes, and you got to be ahead of the curve, and talk to young people that know about it. Watch dozens of interviews and content on YouTube, et cetera. But then I would say 1B is really, what we talked about earlier. It's just kind of follow your curiosity, right? Follow, what you're thinking about in the 5 to 9 hours, and try to figure out how you can sort of, potentially parlay that into your profession, and then go outreach to people that can mentor you, companies you can mentor, and I think that will serve you well.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. For our listeners, thank you so much again. The things that I'm taking away is it's okay at any point in time in your career getting that mentor. I think that's huge. And really develop a curiosity. That is so big. That is like forever being a learner. It's a lifelong learner when you have that curiosity. And so as the world evolves in this AI world, which, by the way, get into AI, I would second that. I'm trying to do it myself. When you chase your curiosity, that can also make your career take wild shifts that you would never imagine. We have a lady working for us at Unity that started out in public accounting, and now she is our marketing and media person. Like, how you could not be further apart. And so I think that is huge. Why she did that is because of her curiosity. And so I would go chase yours just like I'm going to chase mine. And until next time.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.